It's actually 7:03. So, I will now call back to order the regular meeting of the Lake Forest School District 67 Board of Education for February 27th, 2018. May I have a roll call, please, Eileen?
Mr. Novitt? Here. Dr. Lemke?
Here.
Mr. Ford?
Here.
Mr. Barkowski?
Here.
Mr. Folker?
Here.
Mrs. Levert?
Here.
Mrs. Sands?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. As we're all aware, on February 14th, a gunman entered a school in Florida and opened fire. When he was finished, 14 students and 3 adult staff members were dead and many more wounded. Since that time, a national debate has ensued about how lawmakers can make their schools safer, including ideas ranging from having armed teachers to having more restrictive gun laws. While I may have my own opinions on those topics, wading into national politics and debating Second Amendment rights are not my intent tonight. I have 2 points. First, remembering the lives of the 17 people who were killed, and second, understanding the immense responsibility that we have as leaders of our school district as parents entrust their children into our care every day. I've read numerous articles about the people who died in the tragedy. Some of the students who were killed were athletes with dreams of competing in the Olympics. Others were National Merit Scholars, others musicians, writers, volunteers at their churches. Some were teachers and staff members, literally giving their lives to protect their students. They have moms and dads, brothers and sisters and friends, all of whom now struggle to cope with the incredible loss. 17 victims all have one other thing in common. Their only choice in this situation was that they chose to go to school that day. And that brings it back home for me, back to our schools, to our students, to our role as leaders and decision makers in this district. As I think about the 1,683 students and the 308 staff members who choose to go to our schools each day, the awesomeness of our responsibility hits me. As I read about the people killed and I read about their hopes and dreams, it made me personalize the shootings to think about a shooter entering our schools, killing our students, killing my children's friends, killing my own children. I think about the vision we are pursuing for our school district, and I'm glad that we continue to put safety of our students and our staff at the top of our priority list. And that shows up in how we choose to spend the district's money. It does not give me joy to report that we spent over $2 million last year upgrading each of our building's entryways, specifically with this type of horrifying event in mind, but it does provide some small comfort that we did that project. As well, many of our safety procedures were also updated at that time to reflect current best practices. And now with this shooting, our administrative team is again reviewing the things that we can control, our security protocols, such as procedures for entering our schools, understanding how to handle fire alarms and lockdown protocols being implemented simultaneously, ensuring all staff are up to date on their training, understanding enforcement of these procedures, even understanding how to keep students safe if they choose to utilize their First Amendment rights and participate in the upcoming planned protest on March 14th. Some will choose to participate, others will not, but every one of them must be kept safe. I'm pleased to report that our administrative team is hard at work on each of these safety issues. Will we be perfect? Can we guarantee a 100% safe environment? No, we cannot. But we can promise to keep our safety at the forefront of our minds and our actions, and we can promise to do the absolute best job possible, treating student safety as if every one of our students was our own son and our own daughter. That is our commitment. I'd like to close by taking a moment of silence to remember the 17 students and staff who were killed on February 14th simply because they chose to go to school that day. That concludes the President's report. We now move to the Superintendent's report.
Mrs. Levert took time away from her family and her work to attend a conference in Washington, D.C. to advocate for public schools this past month. And I would like to thank her publicly as I have privately for her commitment to the public schools in our community, and also for her work on the school board. And I would like to report a few things about what we learned in the course of that experience. So once a year, the National School Board Association converges. Between 750 and 1,000 school board members converge on Washington, D.C. to advocate very publicly for public education. That happens, we head to the Hill on a Tuesday and meet with any lawmaker that will meet with us. And this is school board members from all 50 states. So this is a picture outside Congressman Schneider's office. Congressman Schneider spent about 20 to 25 minutes with us, which is a great opportunity for us, was receptive to the various points, which I'll cover in a moment. We also had a chance to spend about 20 minutes with Senator Durbin, with him in his office. He is looking at an invoice for $24 million from Lake Forest School District 67 that I delivered to him. That is the shortfall between what the federal government has mandated for special ed services and what they have paid the district over just the past 10 years, $24 million. And the high school is an additional $18 million. So it's $42 million levied locally that went to pay for something that was mandated federally. We also had a chance to spend a solid half an hour with new Senator Tammy Duckworth. Thank you. I don't know why the name escapes me every single time, but it does, every single time. So she likewise, as Senator Durbin and Congressman Schneider, were both gracious with their time and also receptive to the school board members' points. It's a very diverse group of school board members from the state of Illinois. There are more than 50 this year. Cairo, Illinois, which has just over 3,000 students. They also have 800 of their students are homeless. So there are unbelievable challenges that present themselves in districts, and one of the key takeaways is how fortunate we are to be in the communities that we live in. So this is on the steps. Mrs. Levert and Superintendent from NSSED, one of the board members there, and then on the right that you can't really see, but is the head of National School Board Association for the state of Illinois. So the priorities, the NSBA's priorities, and it does bear pointing out that the School Board Association is oftentimes perceived as a group of people that are distinctly left of center, because schools typically are perceived as being left of center. Last year at the same conference, they asked, generally speaking, where do you vote? Generally left or generally right? And this is before the big election. And it was almost an even split, 50-50. So these are school board members from Alaska, Texas, California, Rhode Island, from all over the country. So their priorities are very much the nation's public schools priorities, not a select group of people. And so number one on their list is preventing the privatization of public schools, and the 529 plans that can now be used for private education and parochial education was first and foremost. Their other point is that public schools offer a wide range of choice already. Choice is one of the things that is their interests that are trying to privatize through expanding choice. And the School Board Association said, look, we have all sorts of choices available as is. Also increasing the federal investments in education. If nothing else, paying for what you have already mandated. Very simply, just pay the things that you've already required school districts to do. That is the equivalent annually of 24 teachers in our school district every year. We could hire 24 additional staff at least with that. Healthcare, this was a surprising issue. Medicaid reimbursements represent $8 million to NSSED. And these are services, these are in-kind services that are provided while students are at school that the federal government then reimburses, because it's actually more efficient for the school to provide them than for them to be provided elsewhere throughout the community. The limiting of federal overreach, this is something that doesn't sound really exciting, but when we get a Dear Colleague letter from the federal government that says, please put this report together, and it takes our staff more than 2 weeks to put it together, and it's 4 inches thick, this is what we're talking about. And this actually happens every single year. So we actually have to have an employee that effectively is directed from Washington to go into teachers' grade books and to find specific information out about how specific students are performing. And it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. One of the other surprising issues at the breadth of in the breadth of its impact was immigration reform. There are 20,000 school teachers that are affected by DACA. 20,000, that's 20,000 classrooms at least, and if you're talking about middle and high school teachers, that's that number multiplied by 5 or 6 classes that they teach per day. This is a really, really big deal for many communities throughout the nation. The implementation of ESSA, the Every Student Succeeds Act, the successor agreement to No Child Left Behind, NSBA provides a great deal of guidance relative to that and public comment. Child nutrition, not an issue here, but in many school districts. It's one of the things that Senator Duckworth said when she was in school. She had meals because they were provided to her by her teachers and by her schools. And so she's very much connected to this. This is a reality. Many students across the nation, believe it or not, only get 1 meal a day, and that's the meal that they get at school. The reauthorization of the Carl Perkins at Career Tech Ed, that does not affect our district. IDEA, again, was mandated to be funded at 40% and is currently funded at 15%. We also had a featured speaker, Cokie Roberts, longtime professional reporter that spoke to the entire group. Really an interesting speaker, a ton of fascinating anecdotes. The first thing she said was, showing up matters. You are either at the table or you are on the table. And if you think that writing a letter from home is as good as you showing up, it is not. You need to be here and you need to be in the conversation and influencing the conversation. She also pointed out relative to schools that these tax law changes with these 529s are not an insignificant matter, that this is another type of erosion of the support for public ed. Interestingly, she also said this is the current political climate is not as divisive as it's ever been. And she went back to the early days, the founders, where people were literally shooting each other on a regular basis. Alexander Hamilton being one of them, that was not an uncommon thing. It was actually a place not far from the Capitol where duels took place on a regular basis. She also talked about how things got as bad as they are, where the tribalism in the nation came from. Made a couple of really interesting points, is after the Second World War, people had literally fought together. And so they were united about other things that mattered to them. That the families of representatives, congresspeople, and senators used to come to D.C., and it's really hard to hate the person whose kid is playing in your basement. And people had relationships. The media, the permanent campaign that we all experience, that ads are on 24 hours a day, 12 months a year. Gerrymandering is another. That the number of moderates, they can count the number of people that the most extreme person in one party and the least extreme person in the other party. There used to be hundreds of people between those two, and that is no longer the case. They're down to about 4 moderates now in the Senate, and it used to number in dozens of them. Another phenomenon called the big sort, that people are increasingly moving to places where they want to be around people that share political views with them. And finally, she said, playing in part to her audience, but I think it's also something that she firmly believes in, is that if you send more women to Congress, you'll have more collaboration. And so Mrs. Levert may choose to add some of her comments. Again, I really appreciate the time taken to attend the conference, and it is really very much a drink by a fire hose. How much you learn when you go to these conferences. You just don't realize the overall impact, the federal imprint on public education, how significant it is until you see it. You also don't really realize that your district, that these 7 board members have voted year after year in an amount that totals $24 million for something that Washington hasn't paid for. So it's very close to home for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you get paid?
Senator Durbin said this, cut a check, so we're waiting.
I just want to add a little bit. It was time well spent. We're very blessed in our community when you compare us to the rest of the nation. Very, very fortunate here. But in addition to being fortunate, we must be advocates because advocacy does make a difference. So I was very lucky to be the representative this year, and again, it was time well spent. Thank you.
Thank you for going, both. Questions or comments for Superintendent or for Alice? Okay, seeing none, we move on to our first public participation. Are there any members of the public who would like to address the board? If so, please go to the podium. Seeing none, we move on to reports. Our first report, I believe, is mid-year strategic plan update.
Good evening. This is actually the most exciting report for me, and I hope for you, of the year. And the reason why is when we bring this to you in the beginning of the year, it's kind of this is what we're planning to do and how we're going to stretch and reach towards our mission and vision. And at the end of the year, this is what we've done. But there's lots of faces and people behind the words on the paper, and blood, sweat, tears, dedication that go into that. So tonight's about telling that story and actually hearing from those people who are doing the work and having the opportunity to ask them any questions as they go through that. This is the showcasing of many, and we have a few people here this evening to do that. We have Kevin Joyce, who's a reading specialist 7-8, Cecilia Ryan, who's an ELA teacher in 8th grade, Megan Carney, who's a wellness teacher, 5th and 6th, Laura Douglas, who's a science teacher, 6 and 7, and then we have 2 students, Tessalina Cummins, who's a 7th grade student, and Natalie Deerwood, who's a 7th grade student as well. So we think it's very important for them to share their journey and how this work is impacting them. This is always just a quick reminder. I'm sure everyone in the district, including the board members, are tired of me showcasing this, but this is where we're headed, and this is what we're doing and why we're doing it, and we're trying to achieve these 2 things. So this is the course that you and many members of the community set. We also have the core values that drive us in doing that, and we talk about these at almost every committee meeting that we have because this recenters, this recalibrates, this refocuses our work. The highlights, there were plenty in the report, and we're not going to address all of them this evening. Happy to answer questions about any, but the 5 that we are going to address are the transparent and accessible curriculum, student inquiry process, co-teaching partnerships, social emotional learning curriculum, and assessment writing. So, however, this isn't like the most amazing instruction or the most impactful that students see on an everyday basis. What we are excited to say is that K-8, we have a documented curriculum. Completely K-8 for every teacher. So on the left, I would click into these, but I don't want to use my time in doing those. Every grade level has mapped out units that are guided by the standards that are set forth for those content areas that every teacher has access to and it knows about and participated in. So this gets our staff to understand and be connected to their standards and understand and have conversations about teaching and learning. In addition, we will have documented curriculum and highlights for every grade level for parents. So parents will be able to say what's happening in ELA in 7th grade, what's happening in wellness in 4th grade, and those will be presented at our open house and curriculum nights in the fall and will also be available online for parents. So that's a big feat and was accomplished and is completed for this school year, which we're very excited about. I'd actually like to turn it over to Laura Douglas and her students to talk about their documenting and reflecting process. Last year, the focus for inquiry was on questioning. This year, it's on reflecting, and they're two big parts of the inquiry process in learning and metacognition. So, Laura, please join us.
Hi, I'm going to be pretty brief because I'm lucky enough to have two students with me to share their actual digital portfolios, which I think is very powerful. At the beginning of the school year, we had many teachers from different grade levels as well as different content areas come forth and volunteer to participate in the digital portfolio cohort. We looked at different modes of presenting the portfolios. So different platforms based on different age-appropriate grade levels. My students are in 7th grade, so they'll be sharing their 7th grade science portfolios with you. One of the things that's very powerful about it for me is the students are choosing what they want to document, what they want to present, what they want to put in there, and how they want to reflect on it. And it was very interesting as I went through my different students' portfolios to see if they're choosing to focus on the science, or sometimes they were even just focusing on the processes they took to organize the information and how they're growing as students. So I'm going to have Tessalina come up and just share a quick little portion of her portfolio.
Hi, my name is Tessalina. Or present. Wait, can I? Here. So I'm gonna be sharing my my first weather unit artifact. So this is called a mind map, and the assignment was to take one big idea and like web off different ideas and then have notes about them. And so I chose this because it kind of connects everything we were doing in the unit. So it has wind and Coriolis, convection currents, high and low pressure, heat transfers, and direct and indirect light. And then it all revolves around the question, how are the temperatures rising? And they all can connect through the notes that I took. So that's why I chose this. Thank you.
Okay, and we also have Natalie.
I chose, in our second unit, we focused on sound waves, and I chose this one page that I did in my notebook where I kind of showed the different types of waves, transverse and longitudinal, or however you say that, and I labeled it all, and I think I'm a pretty visual learner, so it really helped me to look at this and kind of absorb all the information. So when looking back and studying, I could really focus on the most important things that I found on this specific page, but also all the others. And I'm a musician, so sound and music is really important to me. So I think that this unit was probably the most fun that I've ever done so far, and I think it's going to impact me in the future. So that's kind of why I chose this specific page, and it's also because, as I said, when I look back, it helps me to see it visually, and I think I did a really good job at really showing what was the most important thing for me to learn, what was the most important thing that we did learn. So yeah, thanks.
All right, thank you so much to Natalie and Tessalina. I'm going to hand it off now to Kevin Joyce and Cecilia Ryan.
Hi, my name is Cecilia Ryan. I'm an 8th grade English language arts teacher.
And I'm Kevin Joyce. I'm a reading specialist for 7th and 8th grade, and we're here to talk about co-teaching. For us, this actually began about a year ago when Cecilia joined us. We had a wonderful opportunity to go to a workshop on co-teaching, and we discovered that while we thought we were co-teaching, we kind of sort of weren't. We were just kind of coexisting. That was a game changer for us, and it ignited a passion within us to share what we learned, what we implemented with fellow staff members through district academy courses.
So what's been really powerful is that we, along with about 20 or 30 other teachers, have worked together to really define what co-teaching means to us. We've done research, we looked at best practices, we looked at the staff that we have in the building and our needs, and we thought about how we can best utilize our teachers to make sure our kids feel empowered to learn their very best, that we can differentiate in each and every classroom. And so the work that we've done is defining what that looks like in our district, creating a handbook so that we have everything documented. And now we're kind of in the process of training the teachers and building those co-teaching relationships so that we can all move from coexisting to co-teaching.
And so initially this is something that we looked at pretty broad and narrowed it down to focus on special education and regular classroom teachers. It's kind of a journey. As we branch out, we'll look at models for specialists like myself and regular classroom teachers and just do what's best for the children. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Megan Carney. I'm here to talk a little bit about our Social Emotional Learning Committee. So what you have here is 2 years ago we started our committee just looking at all the different aspects of what we need, our students' needs are now and in the future. And so what we did is went through all the standards, state standards, started unpacking them, powering them, scaling them to those specific learning targets. We took a lot of time and effort to make sure that they were very fluid, K through 8. We've even been able, after we've done that, we were able to come up with 4 programs that we feel like would be a potential fit for us here at District 67. We've had some site visits to be able to kind of see some of those schools using them, who've been practicing them, to see and ask questions on how they feel things are going and find the goods and bads with them. And one of them is Lions Quest, and that was actually one that I was able to pilot this year for a few weeks here and there through our health lessons in 6th grade. And I think it's just, these are all these programs are going to cover the things that we want our students to be able to understand, whether it's stress management, understanding their emotions, how to interact with each other, and how important it is to even start this in kindergarten all the way through 8th grade. It's just great skills for them to have, especially in things that are going on in the world around us right now. These are only things that are going to benefit our kids. Thank you very much. I'm going to turn it over to Renee Simmons.
Good evening, and I just wanted to talk quickly about our assessment writing component on the strategic plan. And I'm really excited to say that all of this work that the teachers have done and that we've been working on, we are now officially, I'm going to talk just through the lens of science tonight, but we are not only aligned to all of the NGSS standards, but we are also now documented with the units and the curriculum, but we've also got performance assessments in every grade level, K-8. So when I say performance assessments, those are kind of like those innovative assessments that you may be hearing about. I think we're a pioneer in this industry. Every unit that we're designing is completely innovative and authentic, and we start the unit off with questions that are real world and almost aligned with competency-based expectations that high schools are doing. So I've got some pictures of, on the left, under the performance assessment. An example would be the Everett Olympics, where we have the force and motion NGSS standards, but the authenticity behind it is that students are placing a bid for their own Olympics. But the top picture is a picture of a catapult that a student built completely on their own. And then the actual day that was culminating, all the learning culminated in a mock Olympics that the students participated in, with parents coming in, and we had judges, and it was really exciting. But we've now got at least one of those at minimum in every grade K-8. So it provides authenticity and excitement, engagement, and empowerment for all of our students. So that's something that I'm particularly passionate about and excited about. And then also on the right, we have an example of an authentic common assessment, where this is an example of weather standards that we have, and so this is more of an individual common assessment. Students are required to use weather patterns and how to extract information from data, but each student spent the entire year learning about a weather pattern in a different part on the globe, learning how to read the data, but then the application for them individually, besides a big giant culminating weather event, was to individually show that they were able to write a letter to the Smith family about how to plan their trip to a location on a new place on the globe, but being able to read and interpret the data from the temperature, precipitation, and wind speed. So these are some common assessments that we're having students write that are authentic, but also very park-like or other sorts of innovative assessment type learning. The only thing I would say about this, and this is a new direction for us, is with some of these common assessments through our committee, our science committee, and some of our other subject area committees, we've learned that our teachers would like some more professional development on how to write good common assessments. So that made us stop and think and just pause for a minute to inform some decisions for the coming year and to start thinking about how do we provide that good professional development so that we're writing good individual common assessments. So thank you very much. Any questions for us?
Thanks. Thank you all. 7 months worth of work in 15 minutes and showcasing all of our staff. I mean, I'm in awe at our staff members because what we set out this year in our annual plan and those goals were quite lofty. And as you can see by the on-track progress, there are 2 yellow indicators, and those are strategic and intentional, and we don't feel bad about those. We needed to make some adjustments and make some moves in order to do it right and go along the right path. So students, I would have never been able to stand up here at your age and give such eloquent talkings about your learning and what you're most proud of, so thank you. And our staff members, our leaders, and our administrators, I'm always in awe of your dedication and your work for our students, so thank you. Do you have any questions that I can answer?
So I want to reiterate what you said to the staff. Fantastic, fabulous job. And Tessalina and Natalie, you guys were really, really awesome, so thank you for that. Board members, questions or comments for Rebecca or others?
I just want to say everybody is impressive, and thank you for the hard work that went into that and to see the results.
I have a couple. First, a comment. Rebecca, you haven't been here as long as some board members up here, but since the start of my term, my first term 5 years ago, we have heard about documenting all classes, moving towards viable and curriculum, and it's really, really awesome to hear that, at least for the moment, it is complete. I realize it'll change as courses change and whatnot, but having heard about it for literally 5 years, really congratulations. That is a big accomplishment. Thank you. Co-teaching, I know we've talked about it, and you presented a few months back. Can you remind me, at every building, for every grade, do we have a co-teaching situation for each core class?
That's a great question. I'm going to go back to your first point just very quickly, and we have developed a curriculum writing cycle. So actually, we will stay on top of any new standards that come down because we have it mapped out by year to address that within our committees. So it will always be up to date. Second, co-teaching is please help me if I'm stating anything incorrectly, but co-teaching is a way to service students. So it's based upon student need. So it may or may not be at every single grade level in relation to a special education and general education model. This is an example of co-teaching between a reading specialist and a general education teacher.
So, good, bad, or otherwise, I've had a little personal experience in this world. So I understand everything that you're saying. I guess I'll ask it differently. In general, I think that there is probably a student who needs extra help at every building, at every grade, in LA or math, if I talk about those two. If we just take that assumption, maybe it's valid, maybe it's invalid, is there availability if that student exists in every grade at every building for LA and math?
Not currently, no. But when we come forth with our staffing plan for this year, which still needs to come to the board and be approved, obviously the staffing plan for the fiscal year 19 will allow for that to happen at every grade level.
So so starting in the fall.
Correct.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Sorry. Any other questions?
And so, if I understand correctly, we anticipate there being more professional development to expand the understanding of co-teaching across the staff?
Yes. So this year we spent time defining it concretely for ourselves in the ad hoc committee because we needed to do that first. And then now we'll be training throughout the rest of the year, which Cecilia and Kevin are a great example. They've been training for the past year. We've been using teacher leaders, but now we're intentionally doing that. And for example, every co-teaching partnership walking into the fall will have professional development before they walk into the fall. And we'll have a plan for them next year. Parallel, and in addition to that though, so that's the special education, general education line, we're also now going to define what it means to co-teach as a reading specialist because it is different. Kevin might be in 10 different classrooms per day as a reading specialist, so co-teaching looks different than a special education teacher who might be with one teacher all day because there's students of need in there. So we're defining that second piece and we'll provide professional development for all.
And I gave you great kudos for the documentation part. We also have been hearing about differentiation in the classroom for really the same 5 years, and being able to say that starting in the fall, every grade, LA and math at every building, it's available. That's really a big step towards differentiation. So great job there as well.
Thank you.
Other board members, comments, questions? Thank you.
I have a surprise here for our teachers that we've asked so much of over the past 5 years, 6 years in my time here. When I look at the work that we've asked our teachers to do, it is incredibly, we have asked a huge amount of our staff, and it has been a transformational experience for our students. Our kids are doing things today that we really did not imagine that would be possible. And that's all because of the resources that we've been given. The biggest resource that we have, obviously, are the kids and their parents and the teachers that work with them. So I've been looking for quite some time. One of the professional groups I'm in talks about the need to try to find a way for organizations to meaningfully recognize people that are doing things that are critical to the mission of the organization. And it has to be genuine, and sometimes it can be silly, but it has to be sincere in order to do these things. And it's taken a couple years to figure this out, and I hope I have landed on something here. Teddy Roosevelt, one of our former presidents, gave a very significant speech when he was in Paris. And it's known as the man in the arena speech. And some of you may have heard it. And if you haven't, it bears repeating. And Teddy was anything if not a go-get-'em kind of guy that was not afraid to try to tackle challenges. And this was his man in the arena. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. We're asking of our staff really significant things. We're asking of our students really significant things. First and foremost among them, in my mind, is the willingness to try and to do something that may fail, and to pick yourself up and learn from that over and over and over again, because there is no great achievement without great effort, and there is no achievement without failure. And so for that, I would like to have each of our teachers come up here. And if your kids ask you tomorrow what is on your desk, I want you to tell them that it's a cool thing and it means something to you because it shows that you tried, because you are transforming education in our school district. And if you don't know how to turn these things from a transformer into a car, ask a kid. All right?
Thank you very much.
And I'd also like to ask Rebecca and Renee to come up, because I have one for each of them as well, because they are the spiritual leaders behind this. So something for your desk as well. And Mackenzie may help you with that. So I hope that you get asked about what those things mean, and very sincerely, I cannot tell you how impressed I am, how proud I am, as I sit and I listen to Tesselina and Natalie talk about the work that we're doing. Laura, your project last year, with the culminating experience, with all the cool things, trying to sell property in who knows where to these parents, and all the stuff that the kids had learned. It was one of the things that we heard from parents over and over again. And then the co-teaching. Everybody that has ever tried co-teaching will tell you, man, you cannot believe how hard this is. It looks so easy. But just cohabitating and coexisting is where it begins, but then co-serving is where it ends, and it is always a journey, and I really applaud each of you, Kevin and Cecilia, for all your efforts there. So thank you.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you to everyone who was involved in that. Natalie and Tesselina, we are about to move into the next exciting part of our meeting, which is board reports. If you decide you need to go home to finish your homework, go to bed and get ready for school, we will not be insulted if you leave. The rest of you must stay. We now move to more board reports. We'll start with Board of Education Committee, Jeff Folker.
The Education Committee has not met since our last board meeting. Our next meeting is scheduled for Friday, March 16th at 8:30 a.m. here at the West Campus. I will be sending out an agenda prior to the meeting so that board members know exactly what will be discussed. That's it.
Thanks, Jeff. Questions for the Ed Committee? We move on to Board Finance and Ops, chaired by Tom.
Yeah, Finance and Ops met on January 30th, and we were joined by Betsy Allen and Elizabeth Gasparini of Miller Coopers. We went over our annual audit, and Jen did that for us, as well as the auditors. We received an unmodified or clean opinion, which is the highest level of assurance a district can receive. We were able to ask them questions, and it was a good hour with them. We also talked about 2018 and 2019 fees, student fees, notably one that we've already passed, and that is to eliminate the fee for full-day kindergarten beginning in 2018 and 2019. A couple other areas we're really looking at right now are busing and possible fee changes for that, as well as fees for the Community of Learners program, which we've revived in the past year here, or starting to revive. We do not have an update on when the next meeting is. We're trying to plug that hole right now, but we will give you plenty of notice. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Questions for the Finance and Ops?
And Policy Committee?
Seeing none, we move to policy. Kent, thank you.
And Policy Committee didn't meet since our last meeting. There is no meeting scheduled at this point, but at our last meeting, there were certain items that were on the press issue 96 that is on the agenda tonight.
Thank you, Kent. Questions for the Policy Committee? Compensation Committee, Rob?
The Compensation Committee met jointly with some people from 115. We started the compensation process. We have a joint meeting with 115 that all 7 of us will be at next week or the week after, right? Next week. And so more to report in the future.
Questions for Comp? Joint Shared Services Committee didn't formally meet, but the meeting that Rob just mentioned of the Compensation Committee resembled closely the Joint Shared Services with the same makeup. So we will now move on to liaison reports. NSSED, Suzanne.
NSSED last met on February 7th, and at that meeting, the Leadership Council voted unanimously to approve the strategic plan that was shared with this board last month. Going forward, I will be bringing updates with action steps as they are developed by the administrative team and staff in cooperation with the districts. The Leadership Council also sent Dr. Schneider, as you saw in the picture, and Melissa Estes from Glencoe District 35 to the NSBA conference, where they both came back with similar information to share about their experiences and how valuable they were. We are dealing with some financial changes at NSSED for the upcoming 2018-19 budget. It was shared with us that they were looking at a potential for a $4.9 million deficit next year because a number of districts have decided to take back the management of classrooms that are currently in their districts but are being run by NSSED, and now those districts are taking them back. So rather than paying tuition into NSSED and them being staffed by NSSED, the districts will be doing that. And this is reducing the average daily enrollment projection from 407 to 325 students. And so the administration wanted to just give everybody a heads up that they were working on this budgetary challenge. The last conversation I had with Dr. Schneider, he seemed to think they have it almost managed with staffing changes and other adjustments that they're going to be able to make. So I will probably have more to report on that next time. Finally, I did distribute to you a bunch of information, some from NSBA, and a report from the National Council on Disability called The Segregation of Students with Disabilities. And if you haven't had a chance to read it, I would strongly encourage you to, as many of the points that are brought up in there are things that we have discussed at this table and that our district is working on. And I think it's valuable information for us to understand with regard to serving students with disabilities. And that's my report.
Thank you, Suzanne. Questions for Suzanne on NSSED? We move on to Legislative Liaison. Tom.
On February 13th, Governor Rauner delivered his fiscal year 2019 budget address, and obviously it's just a proposed budget, but one of the highlights that came out of it was the continued discussion about pension shift to school districts and how it will impact each school district. It's a drumbeat that continues to get louder, and even though it's a proposed budget, the ramifications could be felt in this district, so it's something we'll keep an eye on and an ear on. And that is it.
Thanks, Tom. Questions for Tom? Move on to Spirit of 67 Foundation. Suzanne.
Spirit of 67 Foundation Board met on Tuesday, February 13th. I was not at that meeting. I was next door at the grants meeting for the Spirit of 67 Foundation. I sit on that committee as a non-voting member. And the grants committee this year has received 26 grant applications requesting $419,465 worth of items and things. Just for reference, last year we received 27 grant applications with the total request being $292,000, and the year before that 26 requests at $258,000. We've been meeting regularly to review those, and they will be making a recommendation to the board at the April meeting. In exciting news, at the last Spirit meeting, it was announced that they hit the 50% mark overall for the district for the first time in their history. Over 50% or more of families in the district have become donors to the Spirit this year. And Sweet Sheridan is leading the pack. And finally, the home tour, it will take place on May 10th. It will be a great idea to go this year because this will be the last home tour until 2020. They are moving to just having the home tour every other year. The years that are off from, I believe it's the Infant Welfare Society show house. So they are taking a pause on the years that happens because it's been a competing thing in the past. The next meeting will be April 10th.
Thank you, Suzanne. Any questions for Suzanne on the Spirit of 67? Exec APT, Jeff.
The Executive APT Board met here in the boardroom on Wednesday, February 14th. The minutes are posted in the board packet. The highlights from that meeting included the announcement of the new slate of candidates for the school years 2018 through 2020. They are, as Vice President of the Exec Board, will be Mary Kay Hanlon. Recording Secretary will be Monica Yawn, and I apologize to Monica if I'm mispronouncing her name. Cherokee Building President will be Carolyn Hutchinson, and Sheridan Building President will be Lindsay Nero. So congratulations to those folks, and thank you for taking on those important roles. The slate will be voted on at the APT's annual meeting, which is going to be held Wednesday, March 14th at Croya, starting at 9 o'clock. There will be refreshments and pastries and things served at 8:30. And anyone who is a member of the District 67 APT is invited to attend and is eligible to vote for the appropriate member of the slate. So please mark that on your calendar if you're a member of the APT to attend the annual meeting. Also at that meeting, there will be a guest speaker, Dr. Mark Reinecke, a professor of psychiatry and behavioral sciences at Northwestern and chief of the Division of Psychology at Northwestern's Feinberg School of Medicine, will be presenting at the meeting, as well as, I believe, Mr. Simick's annual State of the District address. I look forward to that every year. Will you be there with that?
I will not be there this year. I regret to inform you.
Doggone it. Anyway, so that's the highlights, and then the next meeting obviously will be the annual meeting on the 14th, so hope to see as many people there as possible. That's it.
Questions for Jeff on Exec APT? Any other liaison reports I may have missed? Okay, we move on to our second public participation. Are there any members of the public that would like to address the board? If so, please approach the podium and say your name. Paul.
Hi, Paul Markoff. Ton of policies here, but I only have comments on a couple. First, the technology policy. This is probably just a typo and it may be inconsequential, but it appears in your board packet you're adopting the District 115 policy. On the abused and neglected, and I know I can't, there's not question and answer, but maybe there will be a discussion when you get to them, on the abused and neglected child reporting policy, 590. It looks like you've opted not to post toll-free number for DCFS and things like that in the schools, and I'm wondering why that wouldn't be posted for the kids and parents to see. And then on the identity protection policy, 415.
It's possibly the first time that we've ever done this in public participation, but I needed to slow down, please.
Okay, sorry. That was 590 on the... I only have 3 minutes, so I squeeze it in. On the identity protection policy, which is 415, I'm curious why the decision was made to drop the PIPA mandates from that, and it looks like it's being replaced by a proposed paragraph that it talks about personal information, but that remains undefined because the PIPA mandate is being deleted where it defined what personal information is, and it leaves a policy that is heavy on Social Security numbers but nothing else, including other personally identifying information, account numbers, things like that. And also, what is the, I'm curious about if there's any policy involved or written as far as training and handling personally identifying information. For example, are Social Security numbers and account numbers ever emailed unencrypted? This comes up all the time in my practice. I do consumer work, and so I see the impact of this, and it's pretty heavy sometimes. And finally, does the district collect biometric data, and does it have a policy on it, and what is the training involved with that? Because it's not covered in this proposed policy. So if that happens to come up in conversation, I'd be curious on how these decisions were made on that particular policy. Thanks.
Paul, I just have a clarifying question. What was the first policy where we had a typo for?
Oh, 5:125. It's the technology policy. I think it's just an accidental, inclusion in the board packet. It says 115. But
Thank you. Any other members of the public that would like to address the board? We now move to action items. First up, may I have a motion to approve the 2019-2020 calendar as presented?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or discussion on the calendar? Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye.
Mrs. Laverde?
Aye.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Mr. Novitt?
Aye.
Mr. Ford?
Aye.
Mr. Folker?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the 2018-2019 student fees as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any comments or discussion?
As happened last year at this time, I did not attend, and I apologize. I did not attend the Finance and Ops Committee talking about student fees, but I, for some reason, never seemed to connect transportation fees with student fees, so that's my fault. I'm concerned at the level of fees we continue to ask our families to pay relative to transportation. I understand the logic behind it. I understand that we do subsidize a substantial portion of those fees. I think that the district should create some forum to allow us to better understand exactly who utilizes transportation provided by the district, why they do or they don't, and come back with some clarity as to what we want to do. This feels like it's continuing to spiral out of control, and as someone who utilizes the busing service, and for someone who's actually had 3 riders at one time on the buses, I feel for people who are now going to be asked to pay $1,200 a year for 3 kids to be within the district. I understand the reasoning behind it. I just would like to potentially come back with a more strategic approach to how we want to manage transportation, because it's continuing to become a huge cost burden for those families that choose to use it. So that would be my hope over the next year, that we try and do that.
Thank you, Jeff. Other questions or comments regarding this motion?
And just one thought, with the increase that is noted in the fees, it's not a cost that's being passed on totally to the parents or the students. The school district is sharing in that cost increase. We're taking on half the cost. So I don't want anyone to think that we're passing the entire cost on to our citizens or students.
Thank you, Kent. Other comments or questions?
No, it's a fair point that Mr. Folker brings up, and we've discussed it every year when we're going over fees. It's a pretty tough market. They're looking at routes, changing routes, reducing routes, trying to skin the cat a million different ways, but it's pretty difficult. It's pretty difficult to hire riders. It's definitely a challenge.
I understand that, and I agree. I think we just need to understand our constituency a little bit better and figure out how we want to look at transportation. That's all. It's getting high, and I mean, taking my son home the other day from the dentist's office, I had to drive by Cherokee School, and I was stuck in a traffic jam for 5 to 10 minutes. I mean, it was literally, traffic was at a dead stop on Green Bay Road as people were dropping off their kids. And at some point, you've got to think, if an emergency vehicle had to come down that road, there are things I think we just need to get some clarity on as to how we want to treat transportation. And if it's truly a subsidized pass-through every time it comes along, I want to have some clarity going forward. That's all. I personally, I think that would be of benefit to come to some point of view on that. We are one of the, based on the data that I saw, I think we're one of the highest districts when it comes to charging people who ride the bus. We're not the highest, but we're darn close. And we're raising them again this year. And I just think we owe it to our constituents to understand why and whether or not that makes sense or not. And whether or not having that many people taking their kids to school is creating any issues. I don't know if there's a tardiness issue. I don't know if there's a class disruption issue. I don't know if there's a congestion issue that people are concerned about, but I think it's worth at least exploring.
Any others? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Mr. Novit?
Aye.
Mr. Ford?
Aye.
Mrs. Levert?
Aye.
Mr. Folker?
Nay.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Up next, may I have a motion to approve the Olson Transportation 2018-2019 contract as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or questions?
Amazingly, I have a question. So it says that the rates are going to be going up 7%. When I looked at what we approved last year, it's going up a lot more than 7% based on what I can see. Am I missing something? Last year, in March or April, we approved an increase that would affect the contract from the, what would have been the 2015-16 school year, and would carry over to the from the 16-17 school year, and then would carry over to this year, right?
No, we had a mid-year increase last year, so you remember that correctly from the spring. Then there was an increase for the start of the 17-18 school year, and this would be another increase for 18-19.
When was that approved, just out of
At
curiosity?
the same time, same memo. It did the mid-year increase, I believe, and the fee.
But I thought the rates that we approved at that time were the same. The way I read what was on the board packet, it said it was going to be, yes, we're doing a mid-year increase, and these rates will continue through 17-18.
I mean, I don't have it in front of me, but I don't recall it the same way.
Okay, because I was looking at that, because that was, a shared route was like $44, like around $44. Now it's going up to $59. So it was like, wow, that's it's more than 7%. So that's why I'm curious as to, all right. Then if I misread that, that's my fault, but I didn't catch that. All right.
Other comments or questions on the Olson Transportation contract? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Folker?
No.
Mr. Novit?
Aye.
Mrs. Levert?
Aye.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Mr. Ford?
Aye.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next, may I have a motion to approve the GCA custodial contract in the amount of $477,022.67?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Comments or questions?
Just curiosity, this last year of this contract, and when are we going to be looking or taking new offers? And the contract itself seems to be pretty favorable based on past years or extensions, but how high will it go up? When do we start looking?
Mike, you want to take a swing at that?
Yeah, it's, what time of the year will we start that? Probably start percolating in what, November?
Say, as you can notice, I like to get all my annual renewals done kind of at the beginning of January, February, and hopefully most of them are tied up by the time we get the budget, really in progress by March. So we'll probably start it before the holidays, before it gets too crazy, so that hopefully we would have a recommendation by February of next year. There also is some transition. Part of that RFP is if we do go to a new company, they have to transition the current contracted employees to the new company as well. So we have to leave them time if we do in fact end up changing providers.
This is a 12-month contract, correct? And what exactly are they doing in the buildings over the summer? Everything?
Yeah, they do all the cleaning top to bottom, we empty out all the classrooms. They do floors, ceilings, lighting, windows, doors, clean all the furniture.
But they're not in the buildings every day
They're
over the summer?
Every night in the summer.
Every night?
Yes, sir.
And so, okay, but there's no activity going on in the building, so I'm just curious what,
It's 5 buildings that they have to empty out, every single room, every office, clean, top to bottom, side to side.
Okay.
They do every square inch of the
Okay.
gyms, the
Okay.
bleachers, the bathrooms, it's deep cleaning. It's not just a swipe and go kind of cleaning.
okay,
It's the deep.
thank you.
Other questions or comments on the GCA custodial contract? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Novit?
Aye.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Mr. Ford?
Aye.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye.
Mr. Folker?
Aye.
Mrs. Levert?
Aye.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next, may I have a motion to approve the Quest Food Management Services contract renewal in the amount of $55,250?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye.
Mr. Folker?
Aye.
Mrs. Levert?
Aye.
Mr. Novit?
Aye.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Mr. Ford?
Aye.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the replacement of Sheridan roof in the amount of $65,320, inclusive of consultant fee?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Questions or comments regarding the Sheridan roof? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye.
Mr. Ford?
Aye.
Mr. Folker?
Aye.
Mrs. Levert?
Aye.
Mr. Novit?
Aye.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the bid for lighting and ceiling renovations in an amount not to exceed $1,469,735?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Questions or comments? I'll start off, Mike or Jen, just for the purposes of the public. Can you give 60 seconds on what this is?
Yeah, this is the last installment of the very significant purchase that the board investment that the board has made to purchase new furniture.
No. We're on lighting.
Oh, lighting. Sorry, I thought all the way ahead to furniture. So, so lighting. Yeah, like I was saying, lighting. So as we went through the process for selecting which improvements we should make in our buildings, we had one test classroom per building, and we changed the lights, put in LED lights that had dimmers on them. We put new audiovisual equipment in, changed the colors of the classroom, changed the furniture, and so on and so on and so on. One of the surprises was how emphatic our teaching staff was about the impact of the new lights that they could change. They had banks of lights. The current lights, you flick them on and they all go on at the same time. They're fluorescent lights. And this is an approval for the bids to change the lights in all of the teaching spaces that we have. So not the corridors, not the locker rooms and whatnot, but within the classrooms.
Thank you. Other questions or comments on this motion?
Yeah, I was just amazed at how much lower this bid's coming in than the anticipated cost. It's maybe about 3/5 of what we initially anticipated, so I'm thrilled as compared to the initial cost.
It's an amazing finance team, that's what it's all about, so.
Well done.
Yeah.
Other
it's
comments or questions?
Great.
The plan is to do that, if we approve this will be done this summer?
Done this summer.
Anyone else? Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. LeVert?
Aye.
Mr. Folker?
Aye.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Mr. Ford?
Aye.
Mr. Novit?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Now we will do furniture. May I have a motion to approve the furniture purchase, phase number 4, in the amount of $1,449,389.39.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or questions on the furniture purchase, phase number 4? Does this bring us to the end, or there may be some trailers?
There will be little bits and bobs, so we will have, small little things. We forgot one chair here, or this kind of chair works better for this age student, and we want to get a few more of those. But by and large, this is for the core classrooms, if you will. This will make us complete.
And as much for the public as anything on this, with this approval, the 4th phase, whether it happens in April or May, when the students go back in late August, all of the core classrooms, plus a few others, but K through 8 will have new furniture.
Yeah, there's, generally speaking, about a 12-week lead time on this, and I mean, Carol's team, they are just unbelievable. So as it comes in, it's been going in the classroom, so whenever it arrives. So we're 3 months away now, so potentially even in May we could get some things. If it arrives, it'll start to go in classrooms.
So when you say it's going in as it rolls, part of that's wonderful. I know you've talked about the fact that the old needs to come out. Is the old coming out as the new is going in?
That is an ongoing process. So the old furniture will come out, and then over and over and over again, we're going to be talking with our staff about you need to, there are, if the district hasn't paid for this, or if this doesn't, if it's not what we want to see in the classroom, then, if it came from your basement, or if it came from the garage or whatever, it's got to go. So it'll be one swipe after the next at this. So it's going to be an ongoing campaign.
Thank you. Other questions or comments regarding the furniture purchase?
I just had a quick question. What are we doing with the old furniture? Did I miss that?
It depends. We wind up auctioning, I think, all this stuff. And if we can't get enough, we have to, then we discard it. We can donate it in some way. But it's just about everything is auction, right?
The board has a policy on the disposal of these type of things, so it's kind of a 1, 2, 3 strike kind of plan, so we follow that.
Yeah, the school districts don't have latitude, and they can't just give it to the charity of their choice. The board policies are consistent, not just our district, but school districts in general do have this is how you must handle your
The short
discarded
form
stuff.
is that we try to sell it, we try to donate to a like-minded organization, so another educational institution, and if not, we have to pretty much scrap it and hopefully not have to pay to have it taken away.
Unless it belongs to a teacher who can just take it home.
Anything else?
Yeah, I think if this is our last round of voting on this topic, I think it's time to recognize the hard work and the excellent work that Judy Epke and Brittany Jardis and others have done in managing this process and setting up the test classrooms, creating the data and the learning from those so that we could make good, educated, and strategic decisions on the furniture. And I think the kids are going to absolutely love this stuff going forward. So thank you, Judy, and thank you, Brittany, and anyone else who helped with that.
Seeing no other questions, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Novit?
Oh, aye.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Mr. Ford?
Aye.
Mr. Folker?
Aye.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Mrs. Lavert?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Next up is the adoption of resolution authorizing and providing for an installment purchase agreement for the purpose of paying the cost of improving school facilities in and for the district, authorizing the refunding of certain outstanding debt certificates of the district, and for the issue of general obligation debt certificates, limited tax of the district. I move that we table this item. Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Mrs. Lavert?
Aye.
Mr. Novit?
Aye.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Mr. Ford?
Aye.
Mr. Folker?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next, may I have a motion to approve the second reading of Press Issue 96?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or questions? Is this all these?
Okay, so I have a question, which is, within this press issue, there are two policies that we have pulled out as separate items for tonight. And in the press issue, we say we're holding them, I believe, on the cover sheet, right? Aren't we holding both of them? Or one, I think we're not adopting on the press issue sheet, and one or it wasn't, right, we checked off not adopted. And one, right, so it was for the wellness one and for the identity protection. And my read of the individual ones on our agenda later and the ones in the press issue, I think they're the same.
They are the same.
Okay,
But when we spoke to the policy committee, there were questions on both of those. And so as we didn't vote on them last month, it was decided they would be brought back again for a first reading.
okay, but the questions have been answered?
Questions have been answered, yes. I
Okay.
believe I sent them to you in an email.
So, let's see if I can ask these questions correctly. I think that within Press Issue 96, 5.90, abused and neglected child reporting, I was curious why the DCFS 800 number was not listed. Paul and I shared similar concerns, and Alice was nice enough to take some notes for me. Thank you. Do we know anything about the DCFS 800 number?
5.90.
590. Anyone?
On the policy, it says, this has been updated to include more hotline numbers and a directive for employees to immediately call 911. It does not suggest why necessarily the DCFS was omitted.
It was omitted by press.
It was omitted by press, yes. It does say there's an option that the superintendent or designee will display DCFS issued materials that list the DCFS toll-free telephone number and methods for making a report under ANCRA in a clearly visible location in each school building.
Do we feel that we need the DCFS 800 number listed in the policy, or do you think we're okay operationally?
Yeah, I do recall, I finally found the policy here. It took me a while. And we did talk about that. The difficulty that you have with these sort of things that you are going to, I think it's, what paragraph is it? I'm trying to find it. That the administration will display, so on and so on. It winds up being something in policy that somebody's got to remember to do all of these things that are within the policy, and if there's any sort of issue, then I think that's part of it. It's like, you know, how many how many of these things that we want to have in policies that we have to remember. And, have a sign for, and then ensure that it didn't get painted over and over again. I think that's what was the, if I remember correctly, that was the issue that we talked about.
So are you comfortable with the DCFS 800 number not being in the policy?
But it is on the policy. I don't understand why you're saying it's not in the policy. 1-800-25-ABUSE, is that not it?
No, there's an option to add a sentence that we didn't take, I think.
That's what it was, yeah.
And the option is that the superintendent or designee will display DCFS-issued materials that list the toll-free number and methods for making a report in clearly visible location in each school building. So maybe the better question is, how is it that we communicate that information to all of our staff? How is it that they all have that information instead of worrying about whether or not that sentence is in the policy?
But hang on a second. I just want to make sure the phone number still is embedded in the policy. It's in the first paragraph.
Right.
Yes, but this is
But the question is about not posting the phone number anywhere? Okay.
So they get that in two ways. One, every employee has to sign a mandated reporter form. So that's in their personnel file, and that number is listed on there. And second, we have Global Compliance Network. It's GCN training that every staff member needs to complete on a schedule. I don't remember which this segment is, but yearly, let's say. And so they have to go through that as well.
Great. Thank you.
Correct.
Rebecca, maybe don't go away. I have a question on 415, identity protection, regarding why PIP was dropped and a heavy influence on Social Security numbers. Do you have anything to say on that topic?
I do not, because I don't have the policy in front of me, but we will follow all
That's a
all of
separate
the
agenda item.
protection.
It's a separate action item. That particular policy is a separate action item.
415?
In 96, this is the one that's held for further study, so we're going to actually take it up by itself momentarily.
I can't wait. That's probably enough for me for now. Thanks very much, Paul. Any other questions? I've monopolized the time. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Folker?
Aye.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Mrs. Levert?
Aye.
Mr. Novit?
Aye.
Mr. Ford?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the second reading of policy updates as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or questions? Is this where my 415 is? Thank you. I have no questions. Any other questions? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Ford?
Aye.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Mr. Folker?
Aye.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Mrs. Levert?
Aye.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye.
Mr. Novit?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve changing the July 17th, 2018 board meeting to August 21st, 2018?
So moved.
We have a first and a second. Thank you. Comments or questions on this? For the public, we used to take August off, and our current calendar schedule reflects taking August off. We're in transitioning to taking July off and meeting in August. We did that last summer, and we found that it worked a lot better. So in order to change a regularly scheduled board meeting, we actually need to do an action item, which is what this is.
But that's also dependent upon whether there's 30 days between the August meeting and the September meeting, since we post
For the budget. Yep.
the budget, yeah, right.
And there are.
But it may not necessarily be every year, though, correct? So we need to be cognizant of that before we, okay.
Yep, that's right. Any other comments or questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Mr. Ford?
Aye.
Mrs. Levert?
Well, I know now I can't make it, so I'm going to vote no.
Mr. Folker?
Aye.
Sorry, Mr. Borkowski?
Aye.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Mr. Novit?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next up is the approval of policy 5:125, social media and electronic communication, first reading. May I have a motion to approve that?
I would like to jump in here and say that this was policy that slipped in the high school ahead time for this to be processed, the elementary. This has not gone to the policy committee yet, and it should go to the policy committee. So I would suggest that we table this and allow this to go to policy first.
I move that we table Policy 525, Social Media and Electronic Communication, first reading. Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or discussion? Roll call vote on tabling it, please.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Mr. Novit? Mrs. Levert?
Aye.
Mr. Ford?
Aye.
Mr. Folker?
Aye.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We now come to the infamous Policy 415, Identity Protection, first reading. May I have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or questions? PIP information seems to have been dropped, and there's a heavy reliance on Social Security numbers. Do we know anything about this?
Yeah, if you read the comments, it says, in response to some Illinois Council of School Attorneys' opinions regarding the questionable application of the Personal Information Protection Act to school districts, PIPA requirements have been deleted. So the Illinois Council of School Attorneys has an opinion that there's a questionable application of PIPA to school districts. So they have asked that it be removed. That's the level of detail that I'm aware of.
There was also a question about, is there training and handling of Social Security numbers, right? And do we do that, Rebecca?
That is in the policy. All employees having access to Social Security numbers in the course of performing their duties shall be trained to protect the confidentiality of Social Security numbers.
Yes, and very limited access to Social Security numbers, and there is training provided.
Are they encrypted, do you?
Over email?
I don't know how they're handled, but is there any sort of encryption?
I don't believe that we use any electronic method to send them to anyone. But I will double check.
So, Mike, just to let you know, there is an option relative to PIPA. It says for boards that have consulted with their attorney and want to include PIPA mandates in this policy, Personal Protection Act will be added to legal references, and the following will be added as another paragraph immediately after this. And then there's a whole huge, long verbiage around what that potential section of the policy would be. In this case, I don't believe we selected that option. Is that correct?
We did not, and we spoke to our,
and the
before
attorney-
we brought it back to the board, we spoke to the attorney, and
Right.
this was his recommendation.
And then the attorney came back with the additional paragraph at the end of the policy after reviewing it.
So the policy committee looked at it and they're comfortable with it.
We looked at it.
And the attorney did too,
And we sent
it
it to
sounds
the
like.
attorney, correct. So,
Very good. Comments or questions beyond that? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Folker?
aye.
Mrs. Levert?
Aye.
Mr. Novit?
Aye.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye.
Mr. Ford?
Aye.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the first reading of Policy 6:50?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or questions? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye.
Mr. Ford?
Aye.
Mrs. Levert?
Aye.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Aye.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Mr. Folker?
No.
Aye.
This one, we also, Mrs. Weimer, if she's still here, you asked a question at the policy committee meeting, and the attorney came back with an answer, which I believe was part of Mr. Simick's email today. Did you send that to everyone, Mike? About the response from, it was about extracurricular and intra-district.
Okay, I didn't see that. I apologize.
Okay.
It was sent today?
I believe Mr. Simick answered some of Mrs. Sands' questions today, is that correct?
Oh, sorry, that was yesterday.
wasn't-
But it wasn't regarding this one.
but not. No, but I asked
I didn't see the need to rewrite this, to be quite
So more recently, I had asked about why this and the last policy were pulled out to be looked at individually when they were in press issue, and there don't appear to be any changes between what was in the press issue and what we're looking at tonight. And was there something that we needed to understand about this policy?
Yeah, like why did it need to be rewritten? That's why I don't think it's, but anyway, we voted, that's fine.
Okay. Did we just vote on it? All right. Fortunately, that's the first reading. We'll be doing a second reading next month. Perhaps we'll talk about it then. Approval of HR Human Resources items. May I have a motion to approve the Human Resources items as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Comments or questions on HR?
Is this a legal document in any way? As we're paying somebody $16 per day, I don't think that can be true. And so as long as it's not legal, who cares?
It's not a legal document, but it is the board's approval, so we probably will bring you back an amendment to that one line next month.
Okay.
Look forward to that as well. Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. LeVert?
Aye.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Mr. Folker?
Aye.
Mr. Burkowski?
Aye.
Mr. Novit?
Aye.
Mr. Ford?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Now move to the consent agenda. Any item may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any board member. I will now read the consent agenda. Approval of disbursements, payrolls, and financial statements, January 2018. Acceptance of the 2017-2018 audit. Minutes of a regular meeting and workshop, January 23rd, 2018. Minutes of an executive session, January 23rd, 2018. Disposal of audio recordings, April 19th, 2016. Does any board member wish to have any item removed from the consent agenda? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Questions or comments on the consent agenda? Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Mrs. LeVert?
Aye.
Mr. Ford?
Aye.
Mr. Burkowski?
Aye.
Mr. Novit?
Aye.
Mr. Folker?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. FOIA requests. We had one FOIA request this past month. Sheila Shanafelt, commercial, status is pending. We move to announcements. Thursday, March 8th, 2018 is parent-teacher conferences in the afternoon from 4 to 8 p.m. Friday, March 9th, 2018 is parent-teacher conferences all day, no student attendance. Tuesday, March 20th, 2018 is our next Board of Education meeting at 7 p.m. in the West Campus boardroom. May I have a motion to move from our regular board meeting into executive session?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Do we need a roll call vote, Eileen, or can we do that on a voice vote? We're moving to exec session.
Call.
Let's do a roll call, please, Eileen.
Mrs. LeVert?
Aye.
Mr. Volker?
Aye.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Mr. Burkowski?
Aye.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Mr. Ford?
Aye.
Mr. Novit?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We will move into executive session.